Thanks, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet with each of you virtually, and some of you in many different time zones. Sometimes, some places evening, sometimes places morning. So I'm just thrilled to be on here and be participating. You know, a lot of these are U.S. based statistics. I understand that. I know we are, and I just realized we misspelled missing. It's MISSNG out, not missing out. So here we are in the first slide already. This is a new slide deck. So I do anticipate a little bit of some paper rustling just as I go through some of my data, but I missed this in the first list. So in the first review, but you know, we're thrilled to be presenting here to each of you today. And you all still can see my screen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good. I always like to kind of make the disclaimer here that I'm not an expert, but we actually are the ones that are utilizing the gig economy, and we are using it from an employer standpoint, and we are trying to leverage the gig economy ourselves. This is a presentation I put together over the last couple of years, and it continues to change and modify and we continue to update, especially after COVID. You know, now all the move for folks to be remote, and then all the remote work in the COVID and all this is having. So this is continuing to evolve from our standpoint also. But I just want to share my findings and share what we've learned about the gig economy and how we are seeing folks leverage the gig economy from an employee standpoint, and how we are seeing employers leverage the gig economy, which is exactly what we're trying to do. So on an overview standpoint, we're just going to go through these 9 agenda items at a very, very high level. There's not a ton of detail here, but really this is to kind of whet your appetite, whether you're looking at exploring becoming a gig worker. And there's different types of gig workers, whether you're looking to leverage the gig economy from an employer standpoint. You know, how big is the gig? I have a great book that I read a number of years ago called The 100-Year Life that I'm just going to spend a brief slide on, that helps, you know, to help me modify my thinking as related to my business succession plan, and how we're growing our business and sustaining our business. So here's some of our topics. And again, love to have anybody put chats up in the chat box would be great. But I just don't. Okay, somebody says they don't see my slides. Do you not see the slides? Rodney, can you see the slides?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Walt, can you still not see the slides?
I suggested he tried dropping off and on again, so maybe he tried that.
Okay. It looks like in the chat everybody can see the slides, so I'll continue on. And I will tell you, I'm not very technical either, so if it doesn't work, I don't know how to really help. But that's as long as most of you can see it, maybe there's an issue on your side also. So, but Kevin says he can see it, and then also Mandy can. So that's great.
It also looks like everything's spelled correctly too.
You know what? I appreciate that, Rodney. I'm glad you're that guy. I always have one of those on every presentation. So we all need that. So thank you. You know, it's very humbling when your first slide you have a miscue. So, but that's just the way it goes, right? That's business. You know, that's operating. You got to make, you know, adjustments on the fly.
Hey, we're just financial guys, so we don't care if it's spelled wrong.
Well, depends. So I've been in the Cincinnati market. I'm just a farm kid from Northern Ohio trying to make it in the big city of the Midwest here in Cincinnati. I've got a varied background. My whole corporate career can kind of be summed up that I'm a lousy employee. So I needed to go out and find my own entrepreneurial venture, my own entrepreneurial approach. 11 years ago, I bought FranNet Mid-America, which is a franchise consulting company where I work with folks to help them find and determine if they should be a business owner, and if they should, what kind of business should they should they purchase, and should they go into consulting. I do have an M&A background, a corporate development background. I actually in 1998 also, was an employee in a fractional CFO for hire business. So I've been in and around finance, accounting, but I've always been a business builder. And 5 years ago, my business partner Tom and I decided to combine a couple of businesses. He had a bookkeeping CFO business. I had an M&A, a business valuation business, and we combined those into TP4 Advisors, so we could, really help folks get the right skill set and the right talent of financial executives on their team. Because if you go out and hire one CFO, is it a strategic CFO? Is it an operational CFO? Do they have a bookkeeping, or do they have an accounting manager, or do they have a controller? So we're really able to bring all of our resources to a client if they need a CFO 10 hours a week, or they need a controller with heavy cost accounting, 10 hours a month, or they need a bookkeeping specialist, they need somebody to run payroll. We have a team of 35 finance and accounting specialists that we're able to plug and play into our clients and into our accounts that can really help them get the right talent around their table. So that's how we're working within the gig economy, or the fractional economy, or however the different terms are that we will talk about. And we're hiring people that don't want to go in, and as I say, they don't want to go in and make the donuts. They don't want to do the same thing for the same company for the next 20 years of their lives. And COVID has accelerated folks wanting to resign. That's accelerated them wanting to work from home. And also it's accelerated our employees saying, hey, I want great people around the table, but I don't necessarily want that fixed cost of a full-time employee that I'm really not able to round out my entire team with. So that's what we've been able to do. We've grown very rapidly in the last 2 years, and continue to grow not only here in the Midwest, but we're also opening a Central Florida office. So that's how we're working. That's how we're, trying to move forward within this gig economy. And I just want to share a few of my experiences and a few of our findings with each of you here. So here, the overview of the gig economy. It's about 36% of U.S. workers are part of the gig economy, and these statistics are U.S. centric. I just want to declare that. I understand that we're an international organization here, and we have folks all across the world on this call, but these are U.S. centric statistics. I don't have worldwide statistics, but again, what we want to do here today in talking about the gig economy is we want to talk about what are the motivations for employees and what are the motivations for employers. And there's about 68 million independent workers right now that are leveraging the gig economy one way or another. Oops. So again, what is the gig economy? Gig was originally coined in the early 20s by jazz musicians saying they're going to go play a gig or an engagement. And that is what has continued on here into the gig economy. I'm going to go in, I'm going to play a gig. I'm going to have a temporary role. I'm going to have a part-time business. I'm going to go do this for a while and then go do something else. And the gig economy continues to grow. We'll see some statistics, worldwide, what's happening within the gig economy, how it's contributing to personal wealth, how it's contributing to overall economic growth. Here are the different names and descriptors as it relates to the gig economy. And I will tell you, here's my presentation. And I know that my camera is here, but I have all of you in the gallery over here. So if I'm looking over here, I'm not looking out the window. I'm actually looking at each of you to see how you're all doing. So, but gig by other name, flexible, outsourced, supplemental, freelancer, entrepreneur, specialist, consultant. We use the word fractional. We provide fractional bookkeeping and accounting and CFO services. We also provide business valuations and M&A support services. My business partner, Tom, he is a CPA. He leads the delivery for our CFO and our CFOs and our back office accounting. I lead the delivery as it relates to our sell-side advisory services and also some of our marketing and hiring and growth side. So we use the word gig, we use the word fractional, we use the word, flexible, agile, but again, it's all very, very similar. Sometimes gig workers are really fairly temporary also in different organizations. All of our team members are full-time, or not full-time, or W-2 employees. They may work 10 hours a week, or they may work 40 plus hours a week, but they are W-2 employees for us, and we do that for a couple different reasons. But again, that's how we leverage it versus how other organizations may leverage this. So 44% of US freelancers do gig work as their primary source of income, and we'll talk about the 4 different types of gig workers that are out here. And you can see here within this slide, and this is provided by McKinsey Global Institute, that youth and seniors are the ones that are participating the most. So 50% of youth 16 to 24 are participating in the gig economy one way or another, and also seniors that are 65 plus. And we'll talk more about why folks that are 65 plus are participating more in the gig economy. That has a lot to do with demographics, retirement, savings, life expectancy. Here within more of the core earning years, you can see that adults 25 to 64, they're not leveraging it as much, but it is growing. And we're finding that folks within looking to work with us are in either that 25 to 34 year range or that 55 plus range that are wanting to come in and work with us in certain situations. There's also folks, and again, the youth, the young adults, you would call it a side hustle. They're casual earners. They're having a full-time job, W-2 role, and they're doing a little bit of a side hustle also. So here are some of the examples of some modern gig workers. And what you can see here is that 70% of the folks, it's their preferred choice of employment. It's not out of necessity. And 44% of gig workers, it's their primary income. So here I talked a little bit about casual earners up in the right-hand side that are supplementing their income. That's the largest percentage of gig workers that are casual earners. You then get into free agents, 30%. They probably could be employed full-time somewhere, but they want that freedom. They want that flexibility. Again, the casual earners have a full-time job, but they want a little bit of side hustle. Reluctance, that's more out of necessity, and it's their primary income. So similar to freelance designers, but they're forced to work either because they don't have the job experience or the career experience, or they're going into a new role or a new career, and they're taking more temporary jobs, part-time jobs to build up their experience base, to grow into a new field of expertise. And then you have 16% of folks that are just financially strapped. So similar to casual earners, but they just have a different motivation. They need the money. Sometimes you have folks that are supplementing income as an Uber driver, as a Lyft driver. Sometimes, you've got folks that are casual earners that are police officers or law enforcement folks that they're doing side gigs as security guards or event security. So these are the different independent workers, or the different segments for independent workers. And again, the statistic that really jumps out at me is that this is choice. And the market factors that have happened over the last number of years, whether it's COVID, or whether it's technology to work from home, or whether it's the Great Resignation, that people are just tired of having a bad boss. They're tired of being subject to to corporate policies they may not agree with. All those factors have led to more gig workers and will continue to lead to more gig workers. Here, what are employers looking for when they're looking for gig workers? This is out of white collar gig economy study. When employers are looking for gig workers or part-time folks or contract workers, they're looking for specialized degrees. They're looking for somebody that has specific experience. We're doing a project right now for a very large concrete processing and casting business. They need heavy duty cost accounting background. So we're able to bring in one of our specialized cost accountants that has a specialized degree in cost accounting that comes from a reputable firm, has more than 10 years of experience, and they're referred to us by them to our client, by us, of course. But this is what's growing, and these are why people are able to be placed. And that's where some of the casual earners that don't have these specialized degrees or experience, 10 years experience, that's where they're getting some of the experience also. So again, at the very top level, there continues to be 100,000 plus earning independent contractors that continues to grow year after year. And even here on the right-hand side, a number of executives surveyed here would say, hey, listen, if they could leave their full-time job for a contract opportunity, they would do it. They would jump at it. And that was pretty surprising to me also. I'm going to pause right now and just see if anybody has any questions. It's just kind of at a natural spot. I don't want to dominate the conversation either. I want to make sure, this can be fairly interactive, but anybody other than Rodney have a question? Just kidding. Nope. Lisa?
I have a question. So are you noticing in the age gap, and I know I'm jumping back a little bit, but are we noticing in the age differences a pricing difference on what they're charging?
So from our standpoint, you mean, so what the gig employee is getting paid, or what the employer is paying? Help me understand your question specifically. Make sure
So I get what they're charging. So like a senior, are they charging more than, let's say, the adults, or are they willing to do it for less than the adults because they technically are doing it, because they want the income, but they don't need $150 an hour. They need $100 an hour.
That is a really great question, and you're right on. I have a couple senior CFOs that are 65 years plus that are doing this to continue to stay engaged. And they're like, hey, listen, it's not really about the money. It's about me developing some of these other junior CFOs or working with clients. So I find that the majority of seniors, they're not charging really market rate of what they could be. They're really looking at this more of a give back. But I would definitely say that folks that are in the 35 to 64 range, they are wanting to maximize their earnings potential, because if they're on a contract basis, they don't have a base salary. They don't have a consistent salary. Now, what we try to do is have a set amount of hours per month for them so they know what they're getting. But no, that is exactly right. That's a great question and great insight, Lisa.
Yeah, we ran into that here where I could get a senior person for, $50 less than the guy that, or at least $50 an hour. But
Right. No, I know what you meant. Absolutely. And where is there? Where are you located?
I'm in St. Louis.
Okay, great. All right. Perfect. Judy, yes.
Question. Yep. I'm in St. Louis also, actually.
Great. All right.
For the folks that work for you that are doing these projects and things like that, you're sending out on assignments or whatever, do you find that many of them, or do some of them, need to work with more than one organization like yours in order for them to kind of keep their dance card full? Or are you, or do you want or expect some allegiance to you? How does that usually work?
Well, all of our team members are W-2 employees, number one. That's a little different. So they're not contractors, they're W-2 employees, because we want to pay the employment taxes that helps us out on our E&O insurance and our general liability insurance. And quite frankly, it creates more of a community and more of a team feel if everybody is an employee, number one. So that is important to us. Number two, as part of our employment agreement, if they have any clients that they've worked with in the past, or they're currently doing a little consulting, we have an addendum that outlines who they're currently working with and who they can work with outside of working with TP4. But what we do expect on a go-forward basis, that if they would find somebody else, that would be run through TP4. Now, let's say we have a senior CFO out there that brings in a bookkeeping client. They're not going to want to do that bookkeeping but we'll have a team member that can. So we actually then pay a commission if they bring new clients in, even if they don't work on that directly. So if they work on that directly, we pay all of our team members a flat hourly rate, depending on their experience and depending on their levels. And then we then have a budget number of hours per week within a range. And then we charge our clients a flat monthly fee. So we don't bill hour for hour. We do a scope of services. We give our specialists and our advisors a certain budget per week, and they're expected to stay within that range. If we get out of scope, we then do that adjustment. But depending on who they are, they will come in and say, hey, I only want 20 hours a week. We do have others that say, hey, I want as many hours a week as you can give me. So we have some stay-at-home dads and moms that are coming back into the workforce, that are at home with young children, that are still working, want to work 5 to 10 hours a week. And we have other folks that want to work 35 to 40. So we manage that for them, because the majority of the people that want to work with us, Judy, they don't want to be out selling and marketing. They just want to do the work. And that's what we provide for them. We provided the technology, the infrastructure, the clients, so they can just do what they love to do. That was a long answer. I'm sorry.
No, it was great. Thank you so much.
No problem. Any other questions? So here's some of the facts, and here's some of the opportunities for gig workers, and some of the opportunity for workers in general. As we see folks, the aging demographic, that people up until the last couple of years with COVID, the life expectancy has continued to grow and expand to 80 plus years. Actually, during COVID, it has actually adjusted down to 78 years for I believe for men, for women, and 76 for men. But that is, we look at that as a little bit of a blip. But this whole thing of having a life that had become multi-stage, transitions are much more the norm. I mean, my father-in-law, retired from one company after 45 years, and that's the only job he had. Here, my son and our son and daughter-in-law, they're 26 years old. They're living in their third city in the last 4 years. They've gone to New York, to DC, and now they're going to Boston. And they've had 3 jobs already in a 4-year stint, and that's just normal. So these transitions are continuing to be the norm. And he's in finance also. So, new stages are emerging. Recreation will become more important than recreation will become more important than recreation. How do you modify your skill set? How do you change? Here on the right-hand side, estimated that 85% of the jobs that today's learners will be doing in 2030 have not even been invented yet. I know from our business standpoint, we're utilizing artificial intelligence. We are utilizing bots as it relates to, doing traditional standard reconciliations and just some things that we're taking some of the manual human-based elements out of it. And so we don't even know what that's going to look like. I joked earlier that I'm not very technical. I'm going to have to be technical just to keep up. I can't be like my father, who's 80 years old now and has a flip phone because he doesn't want to mess with all the other stuff. That's what we have to do. We're going to have to continue to recreate ourselves. Options are going to continue to be more important. People are staying younger for longer, right? Old is 20 years older than you are at any point in your life. So, how are you going to continue to take care of your faith, your finances, your family, your fitness? What does that all look like? And there's a lot of generational complexity. We all have experienced, or even have some of our own millennials still in our basement trying to figure themselves out. We still have parents that we're trying to care for. So there's lots of multi-generational things happening, and also, and it's time for greater experiment. So if we dig a little bit back into this multi-stage life, think about it for most of us that we've had 3 traditional stages of life. Education, we graduate. Sometimes we go back to graduate school, or sometimes we completely change degrees. So we have education, then we go off and do our career work. So we're educated from, let's say, 0 to 21. We then go into our career from 21 to age 65, and then we retire at 65. We get the gold watch, we go off into the sunset. Well, it's now a different time, like the slide says. So now we have some additional phases. are additional stages. We have exploration. Sometimes we have folks leaving the educational stage and going exploring and traveling for, 3 or 4 years. We have agile workers. So an agile worker is someone that pretty much just forsakes the traditional career path and they start their own entrepreneurial activity. 4 or 5 different small businesses generating 10, 15, 20, $30,000 here and there, kind of cobbling it together. And then we have folks that are also putting portfolios together. And again, these portfolios that are getting put together, they're not necessarily once you turn 55 and you're getting close to retirement, or once you're in retirement. There's young millennials now that are putting portfolios together that they're generating this income. And so I had a client of mine that I worked with on the franchise side a couple years ago. They were 28 years old. They both worked down in Fayetteville, Arkansas, for a supplier of Walmart, and they quit their careers at 28. They bought an RV and they literally traveled for 5 years on their savings. And their whole response to me was, we can get retirement, or we can make money later. We want to enjoy this time. They ended up coming back off of their 4 or 5 year hiatus or exploration, and they ended up buying a franchise business through me that allowed them to have freedom and flexibility. Most of the time, the folks I've worked with over the last 11 years have been the ages 51 to 61, because they're at that career and they're at that spot in their career. They want to be more entrepreneurial. So all of these stages are kind of getting mixed up. Even if you look at my neighbor, who at the age of 45 went back to medical school. She'd always wanted to be a doctor. Both her parents were doctors, but when she graduated from undergraduate school, her husband was a doctor. They had 3 children. Her children graduated and got out of high school. She went back. So she was re-energized. She was re-educating herself. So these are all the stages that are changing, that are impacting, employees. And this is what employers need to be aware of. They need to be ready to prep for as they're trying to attract new talent. The time of somebody going in and working in the office 40, 60 hours a week is gone. Our son that works for a private equity firm in Washington, D.C., he goes in 2 days a week now. He was on Wall Street in New York City for a couple years before COVID. And he was in the office, as an analyst, 70, 80 hours a week. That's all changing, even at different levels, even for executives. So as employers and as potential employees, we have to understand the continual changing dynamics of how we need to reinvent ourselves to be marketable. And as employers, we need to reinvent ourselves to make sure we're attracting the right talent. For those of us in the States here, this is just a very interesting slide for me as we were doing research. So in 1935, when the Social Security Act was passed, retirement age was set at 65. But what I didn't realize that the life expectancy was 61. So they expected you to die at 61, but you got retirement at age 65. Now, if the average life expectancy is 80 years old, retirement actually should be 84 or 85. So put your head around that if you needed to create net worth and earnings and you couldn't retire until you were 80 or 85, that's a whole nother 20 years of work. That's a whole nother 20 years of earnings, of building net worth. And here in the right-hand side, you can see that 34% of workers across the United States have less than $1,000. So as people continue to get older, and as people continue to grow and not have pensions, a number of folks 20 years ago had pensions, had defined retirement plans. That's not the case anymore. And so these are some of the trends and demographics that folks have to expect, because we're living longer now, and 50% of children born in the West right now will live to be 100. Where if you're 60 years old right now or 40 years old right now, you have a 50% chance to live to 95. So, we're continuing to grow older. We're continuing to age and be more healthy with medicine and fitness. But again, you have to be prepared financially. And that's where employers are leveraging some of these older, more mature workers, and that's where some of these older, more mature workers are willing to work longer and participate. For the employer, you know, what is in it for the employer? What do they really want, right? We have found this to be really our advantage. You know, a number of business owners or key executives say it's easier to get a contractor hired than it is to get a full-time employee hired. It's easier to get a specific skill set for a short period of time and move more of a fixed cost to more of a variable cost. You know, when somebody brings us in to do their bookkeeping work, if I have somebody that gets sick, that's on me. I got to backfill that work. So that's why we have backup processes where if they've got somebody get sick, especially over the last 2 years with COVID, they don't have backup. So, you know, the gig employers looking from what we're experiencing to have expertise, to have backup, to have redundancy, you know, and they're supplementing or outsourcing their staff with folks that can have these special skills, peak growth time, you know, cost management, you know, tight labor. And again, we've been very fortunate to be able to hire at will. And we started 2021 end of 2020 with 9 employees. We now have 35, and we're going to hire another 4 the balance of this year. So, I mean, the balance of into April. So it's working for us. It may not work for everybody. But again, part of our success is that I've got a really good partner. And, you know, our board of directors says, hey, together, you guys have one complete skill set. You know, he takes care of the delivery. I take care of the growth. And it's really good. It's really been good for us and really allowed us to attract some really good team members. Again, you know, oh, back to this. I forgot one note here. More than 76% of companies use some form of Agile Worker today. So again, it ties in by bringing in a contractor, and on an average, these workers comprise about 30% of the workforce, and is going to continue to grow. And that's from Randstad Workplace in 2025. The commercial demand is starting to align more with the labor market, and folks are more open to, you know, contract workers. Now, if you're running a manufacturing and you're running a CNC lathe, you can't do that remotely. You got to have people on site. So there's some roles that employers can't bring contract workers into. We understand that also, but again, that's key. And so for the employee and the employer, it's about diversification. Okay, it's about, you know, employees do not want the instability of being dependent on a single employer anymore for their entire income. Multiple employers often bring greater opportunities for cross-functional learning. Now, we don't leverage, you know, multiple employers. We don't have our team members have multiple employers, but if you're a gig worker, you can do that. Employers, it's safer to hire multiple part-time fractional resources rather than one full-time employee. And you have access to numerous resources with a very diverse skill set. So, any other questions so far?
Hi, Todd, it's Michael. I'll ask one question.
Sure.
A lot of FANG senior finance types have struggles across industries. You know, our FANG chairman, Matt, talks about this a lot. We like to think of ourselves as flexible. You know, if I'm the CFO of a widget maker today, I could be the CFO of a professional services company tomorrow. A lot of employers don't see it that way. So it's a barrier to a lot of us finding gig type jobs. What's been your experience about that? How have you pitched people with diverse industry backgrounds, and how would you advise us to market ourselves so that we can fit in maybe an industry where we don't have deep experience as a finance executive?
That's a really great question, and we do run into that. And as we grow, we continue to bring more specialized CFOs on board. We have 2 levels of CFOs. We have strategic CFOs and we have operational CFOs. Our strategic CFOs have a breadth of experience and usually engage with the client and with one of our operational CFOs or controllers. I think from where we sit here in the Midwest, most of our clients and most of the folks that we serve are under $35 million of revenue. So if they have a really strong strategic or operational CFO that can understand the accounting and finance function, they're really okay with that, because we then bring me and my business partner in with our experience. We can then supplement some specific areas that we don't have, that our CFOs don't have experience in. But I would say that having a good solid track record within one industry is good, but having a breadth of experience from where we sit it is better. And we're actually bringing CFOs in that say, hey, listen, I've not done a professional services firm, but I've done these 3 industries. I'd like to learn, and they're getting some experience with our help and with also our CFO's help. So I don't want to say it's both, but it's really our client base are closely held businesses, mostly family businesses. And if they have somebody that they trust, they have somebody that has been there and done that, can help them really interpret the financials and guide them through a banking conversation, guide them through a downsizing conversation, help them understand growth opportunities. That really is not specific to an industry. Does that make sense, Michael?
It's good to hear that they're open-minded.
Yeah.
I guess in small companies, that's more likely.
But as we get to some of our larger companies, and we have an e-commerce company right now that went from 20 million to 35 million, that will go to 55 million this year. We are providing strategic CFO services, but we are actually helping them find a full-time CFO with specific experience within e-commerce. And that's how we mostly operate, is that when clients get too big to really cost justify, our services, we go out and help them replace us. So we'll create a job description. We'll be part of the interviewing process. We'll find the right replacement for us also. So any other questions? Okay. So how big is the gig? Over 1/3 of U.S. workers, again, 36% participate in the gig economy, either through being their primary or secondary roles. More than 90% of U.S. workers would consider freelancing or independent contracting work. So people are open to the gig economy, and almost half of all millennials use an online gig economy platform to find work. So that's something very different. And we have a slide of different platforms. There's GLG, there's Uptake. I mean, there's all kinds that we'll talk a little bit more about. But again, based on kind of where we're going with what I would call the Great Resignation, where we are going with work from home, what's happening within technology, even by 2025, based on Randstad Workplace 2025, that expected percentage of agile talent in the workforce by 2025 will be about 69%. So 52% of C-suite executives say that by 2025, their organizations will be much more committed to building an agile workforce. Not because they necessarily want to, but because employers are demanding it. Again, I'll go back to our millennials that are 26 and 27 years old. Their next job, they want flexibility. They don't want to go into the office all the time. 60% of employers and 70% of employees agree that by 2035, a majority of the workforce will be in some kind of agile agreement. So we're definitely growing that way, growing that way. And it's something that we all need to be aware of, whether we're the CFO within a large company or a small company, and we need to supplement our team, or we need to help grow. But again, even within the global gig economy, it's supposed to grow to from 204 billion in 18 to 455 billion in 2023. And again, here we see, as it relates to the impact on the global growth economy in 2023. One thing that I would be remiss if I didn't address is the Great Resignation. We've all heard about it. We've all, had people, maybe some of you are part of the Great Resignation. I know personally, my family, my wife participated in the Great Resignation at the end of this year. You know, she started her career at Procter & Gamble. We have 5 children. She took some time off. She re-engaged, and she's like, hey, listen, after 14 years, I'm just going to take a break. She's not retiring. She's refiring. She's taking a break to say, hey, what's out there? How can I do something a little different than what I've done over the last 30 years within my career? Primary factors that have led to, you know, the Great Resignation or work-life balance, you know, new career goals. My wife's career goals have changed since she started 30 years ago. Some folks are resigning because of some mandates, long commutes. I had lunch yesterday with a guy. It's like, hey, my commute is an hour and a half round trip in the morning, so it's 45 minutes in, 45 minutes out. I get so much more productivity out of my time if I don't go into the office. Some folks, they don't really have inflexible schedules. Now, this leads more towards professionals versus more labor or skilled labor, anything like that. And sometimes people's values have just changed. So, you know, I had a good friend of mine that was a general manager of a flavors company. He resigned, taken 3 years off. He just texted me yesterday, said, hey, listen, I've been out in Florida for a year or so. I'm coming up next week. We're selling our house. We're moving to Florida. I'm taking another year off because he can, because he has the ability to do that. So surveys show that anywhere from 25 to 40% of workers are thinking about quitting their jobs. And they have. And the reason that people are leaving is burnout. Okay. And 28%, like my wife and like my buddy, have left their jobs without having any other job lined up, which is almost unheard of, right? You always, you know, you got to have a job before you leave your job. And that's not happening right now. So, but burnout's driving resignations, and employees are prioritizing their benefits and well-being above over earnings. This is a very interesting slide by Upwork that talks about the timeline as it relates to, you know, the Great Resignation. Here, 44% of U.S. freelancers do gig work as their primary income. 60% do gig work at least one time per year. That's going to continue to grow into 2022 and into 2023. My wife does not have a set timeline on when she's going to start looking for a job. My buddy now extended his timeline another year. So whether you're participating in the Great Resignation or whether you're part of an organization that needs to leverage this talent that's on the market now, just be aware of why people are quitting, why people are joining organizations, and what's important to them and why it's important to them. And I'm running a little late here, so I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna skip there. So here's a suggested reading, the 100-Year Life. I got a number of the statistics from the 100-Year Life. It talks about, you know, the living and working in an age of longevity. I got some of the statistics out of here as it relates to, you know, the average age, life expectancy, earnings capabilities. I've read it 4 or 5 times. Over the last 3 years, it's impacted how my business partner and I have viewed our exit strategy. My business partner is 58, I'm 53. We really don't see us exiting. We see us bringing in junior leaders that can grow to senior leaders that we can transition the ownership to. I like to work. Now, I don't want to work 60 hours a week, you know, in 10, 15 years, but I'd be willing to work 5, 10 hours a week. I'd be willing to work with the right kind of clients. I'd be willing to invest in coaching younger team members. And again, these are the things that, you know, that I'm taking into consideration. So I encourage you to take a look at this book. Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott, they're London School of Economics professors. It's not a new book by any means, but if you haven't read it, has anybody read the book by chance? Nope. All right. Well, you've got some new reading here options. Here are some of the gig-driven companies and resources. Look at GigSmart. You know, look at Upwork. look at GLG. You can put your profile in some of these, like my profile's in GLG, and I got an outreach this morning for somebody that wanted to leverage some of my experience in a specific industry. I put out there that my hourly rate is $225 an hour. They can choose, look at my profile, they can choose my hourly rate. They can say, I want to talk to Todd for a half an hour. I want to talk to Todd for 45 minutes, 2 hours. Here's his rate. They then reach out to me. I have to review the engagement for however many hours it is, and I have to click if I'm interested or not interested. I do 3 or 4 or 5 of those a year. Just keeps me interested, keeps me engaged. TaskRabbit is more for hourly construction organizations. So lots of different options. You know, look at GigSmart. GigSmart is a startup that's more on the hourly skilled, semi-skilled. You know, they've been partners of ours that we've worked with. I've gotten a number of a lot of my data from GigSmart, from Rich Oaks out there. So again, just be aware, look up, you know, a lot of finance folks, I will just be honest, they don't like to do the business development. They don't like to go out and get clients. They like to do the work. So if you can work with some of these apps and put your information out there and get some work here and there, it's a great tool. And again, remember from a previous slide, almost 50% of millennials use one of these online platforms. I just put this slide together, different ways to create some additional income. You know, you can work full-time and have a side gig, a side hustle. You can be self-employed, do some consulting, do some subcontracting. Again, part of what we do is help people, you know, find additional income through franchise businesses, or you can go start something up on your own. So they're not mutually exclusive, but there's different ways to drive income, drive revenue, understand how to prepare yourself for longevity. And here's some of my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me and connect with me on LinkedIn. If any of you have any questions, please let me know. I'm actually working with a client right now in Dubai on a franchise opportunity. So it's just serendipitous how this has all happened by being asked to present here with your organization through Fang, and then also having some clients that I'm working with in the Gulf. So it's been a lot of fun working with them also.